those things that you think you'll forget, and have a notepad at your bed where you jot that information down. You're basically dumping the thoughts from your mind onto a concrete surface like a piece of paper. The reason for that is your mind has a protective tendency. So if you're ruminating on something, it automatically thinks that it's important, whether it is or isn't. It thinks, oh, I must hold on to this for my person because they keep thinking about it. But when you put it on something concrete, like a piece of paper, a notepad, a Post-it note, I mean, we're not talking about a fancy journal. We're saying just to get it on something so that then you can let it go. Your mind can release it. And then you can still go back to it if you need it. You can look at it that following morning. And some people even make that their habit, is that they dump it at night. They do the mind dump, the brain dump. And then the following morning, they go back and they look at it. They have a time set aside to analyze that information. So if you need it, it's still there, but it's not preventing you from going into those deeper levels of sleep. Other things that you can do include affirming positive affirmation or affirming messages. If you have a tendency to do a lot of negative self-talk and your ruminations are over those types of things, then you can replace those negative thoughts with positive affirmations. Journaling helps quite a few people. Personally, journaling is stressful to me. So what you'll notice is that for each rest strategy, there are multiple things that you can do because it's very individualized. It's specific to your own personal likes and dislikes, the things that you find to be restorative. And that is the key phrase to keep in mind. These restful activities should be restorative. They should take you back to a better place in whatever area that you're feeling a depletion. Some people do well to just actually have a word for the day. So if you have a tendency to have just a lot of kind of negative self-talk going on and you can't remember some big phrase or quote, to just have a positive word that you continue to go back to that helps you settle your mind and to be able to have that mental white space to clear your thoughts for a time. Next is emotional rest. Emotional rest is huge now that we have so much social media and so much social interaction that we're seeing. So with emotional rest, what we're wanting are to have those relationships with people where we can allow ourselves to be as real and as authentic as possible. Because people who have an emotional rest deficit, one of the big things that you'll find is that they're always feeling as if they are in failure mode. They're always evaluating their flaws, and they feel that others are also doing the same. They have this increased insecurity and self-doubt about their abilities, about their worth, about what they offer and bring to the world. They feel uncertain about their actions. They have a tendency to second guess themselves all the time. They go back and forth. Well, should I do this? Should I do that? They question every decision that they make. They have a tendency to want to escape reality. So rather than living their current life, they have a tendency to want to go into daydreaming and escapism. And they're oftentimes their worst critic. And so you may notice someone like this. You may automatically have someone come to mind who is like this. But the thing about this is understanding that it's something that can be treated by seeing how to add more emotional rest in their life. Now, by adding more emotional rest, that strategy first begins with understanding if you have people-pleasing type tendencies. If you find yourself saying yes to situations that you know you would rather say no to, it is always better to give a truthful yes than a truthful no rather than a reluctant yes, because your reluctant yes will position you to continue to have people invade your personal boundaries because they won't understand that there will be times when you won't want to volunteer for a situation or that you don't have the energy to do something they're asking you to do. So you want to keep that freedom there to be able to say no and mean it and have others respect that. You always want to have time to do work that is satisfying to you. And you want to have time to do activities that you love. One thing that many people who have an emotional rest deficit say is that they always feel like they're doing for others, but they never have time to do for themselves. And then when I ask them, well, do the people that you feel like are encroaching on your time and your space, Have you ever let them know how you felt about that? That you felt like that they were not allowing you time for yourself? Most of them say absolutely not, because I don't want to offend anyone. So people who have an emotional rest deficit are the ones who don't want conflict. They don't want to have conflict with others. But you have to understand that boundaries by definition are confrontational. So there has to be a level of comfort with conflict to be able to maintain healthy personal boundaries. You want to be able to maintain a high self-esteem, and to do so without gossiping and all those things that create more emotional rest deficits. And you want to practice authenticity, allowing yourself to tell your truth, to speak your truth in a way that you feel like you are understood. Now, spiritual rest is one that gets very controversial because there's so many different interpretations of what spirituality is. So I don't go into great depths on this because I don't want to offend anyone, depending on what your own personal beliefs are. But I do want to address that because I think it's important. It's definitely a part of the 7 types of rest, and these 7 make up our entire being, makes up who we are and the way we interact with the world. And so one of the things that people with a spiritual rest deficit will often experience is this sense of dissatisfaction with life, this hopelessness, feeling distant from people, from God. Sometimes we'll get these thoughts that life is better if I just wasn't here. My being here, my purpose just has no benefit and really isn't contributing anything to the bigger picture. So when you have those types of thoughts, all of that goes back to a spiritual rest deficit, because it loses that connectivity with being able to understand and to feel a sense of belonging, of love, of acceptance, and peace, and knowing that you are needed, that your contribution is important. Now, a spiritual rest strategy can include things like time for prayer and meditation. And it doesn't have to be a prolonged period. It can be a short period to begin with. It is just to begin that practice, that thought process. It can include things like incorporating music that's uplifting rather than music that is more draining, like talk radio or the news. It can include things like scripture or phrases, and allowing those things to be in prominent places where you are constantly being exposed to them. If you have a tendency at work to kind of get this, I don't want to be here, I don't feel like I'm doing good work, I don't feel like I have purpose, to actually put these things up in your office, to surround yourself with the positive thoughts and scriptures and phrases that bring life back to you, to put it in a place that you are constantly seeing it so that it will be able to speak to you and to be able to help restore these areas. And then focusing on time with God and reading different things that help to encourage and to motivate you. Positive books, scripture, those types of things that bring back some energy into your life. Next is a social rest deficit. Now, social rest is interesting, like I said, now with the increase in social media that we have, text messaging, our phones on our hips 24 hours a day, we have just a onslaught of information coming in about our friends, our families, and our coworkers, our high school friends, everybody that we've ever met, coming in all at one time on these social media outlets. Now, a person with a social rest deficit, you probably had these times when you've had maybe not necessarily a friend, but you've read where someone had great social media connection, but they still had something negative happen. They attempted suicide or they had a major depressive episode, and you're looking on their social media account and they've got thousands of friends and they got thousands of likes and comments on all their posts, and you're thinking, and they say, I feel disconnected, and you're thinking, how can that possibly be? That's a sign of a social rest deficit. We're now at a situation where we are greatly connected through the internet, but we feel even more disconnected because the relationships we have virtually with people do not contain the same power and influence as those relationships we have when we are able to look eye to eye with someone, or we are able to be in their presence. Now, an interesting fact that they're showing is that even this type of interaction that we're having right now, where we're face to face, even virtually, has more power in changing people's mindsets and how they feel than just the typing we do on our Facebook post. You'll notice that Facebook, Instagram, all of these places are now allowing more and more video because we're finding that the quality of relationships increase and the effectiveness of being able to feel socially connected increases when we have that visual component, when we are able to see facial expressions and mannerisms and hear voice inflections. All of those things play a role in how we feel and how connected we feel with someone. And so when someone has a social rest deficit, particularly if they're spending most of their time in a virtual text-only world, they're going to continue to feel as if they're distant from family and friends, feeling distant within their relationships. One huge area that I see this with in the clients, the coaching clients that I work with, are in their relationships with their spouses. That even though they're living in the same house and they're raising kids maybe together, that they feel disconnected in their relationships. One very easy way that I found that a lot of marital couples have been able to incorporate a social rest strategy within their marriage is by allowing face-to-face time. If you think about it, a lot of times within our homes, we're not face-to-face with our spouse unless we're either arguing about the kids or arguing about a bill or something else that has us kind of in this emotional tension area where we're arguing. So oftentimes what I'm finding is when I start discussing their social rest strategy and how to restore relationships, one of the first things we recommend is spending 5 minutes face-to-face with your spouse. No TV, no radio, no kids, no talking about bills, face-to-face time, where you simply ask the question, how was your day? And the thing about this is, so often we get asked that question, how are you? And we answer with that glib, oh, good, or I'm fine, or it was great. And we come back with this couple of word answer when oftentimes the truth is not even summed up in those few words that we throw out because we're just programmed to say them. So what we do is we have them start with just that simple question. And you're not allowed to say a 2-word answer. You're required to give a heartfelt, thought-out answer about what's going on in your life and in your head and in your heart. And what we're finding is that when couples do this, their connection goes up. One of my favorite emails came in from a gentleman who, long before we kind of got far into this research with couples, who wrote a letter and said, my wife was reading your book, Sacred Rest, and she showed me this section on social rest, and our marriage was really at the breaking point where, neither one of us knew if we could stay in this relationship because we didn't know each other anymore. And she and I came to the agreement that let's just do the 5 minutes. What can it hurt? This was 60 days later that they sent this email with this picture of them together. And the joy on their faces was more than enough evidence of how things were changing. And I love what he says. He said that his words were this: I hadn't looked at my wife face to face without having an agenda since we were dating. Now think about that. Because like I said, most of our face-to-face interaction is with something specific that's going on. They have been, like many of us, sitting in the same room, maybe even watching TV together, on their computers together, their laptops, whatever. So they were physically together without the connection. And that's what social rest is about, is that connection. So you want to identify those people in your life that are draining to you. And those draining people may not always be someone who's bad. We think about, okay, your boss might be draining, or, a client that's difficult might be draining. But think about this, your kids are draining. You love them, but they're still draining. They still require things from you that pull from your energy sources. So you have to recognize those relationships that are draining and make sure that you have relationships that are life-giving, that pour back into you, that restore that part of you that needs to be understood, loved, accepted without having them require more work from you. And so you want to give some priority to those relationships, and marriage should be one of those relationships. Or yes, it can be draining at times, but there's also an opportunity for healing and restoration in that as well. Next is sensory rest. Sensory rest deficit is very easy to recognize if you find that you are easily irritated. If you don't like loud sounds and you're easily irritated and bright lights get on your nerves, you start noticing it more. You start having that pressure behind your eyes after working for a long period of time, or you don't like being around certain smells or odors. You don't even like being touched. All of these are signs of a sensory rest deficit. What it means is that your body is constantly under ongoing sensory input throughout the day. Your computer lights are giving you input. If you're in an office space with other workers that are around, that hum of conversation that happens. One great example I just experienced was at a large conference that I was at with over 600 people in attendance. And so I'm sitting at my table at the conference, that one of those in-between sessions where you have like 15 minutes to run to the bathroom, get coffee or whatever you need to do. And you've got, 300 conversations all going on at the same time. All you could hear is that hum of talking and chatter. That started, I immediately, because I recognize these things now, started thinking, I can feel this sensory deficit coming on because I'm being pulled and drained in this area. So if that's your environment that you're working in, if you're constantly having background noise, and even within just your car on the way home, playing the radio every time that you hop in, and even though you're not listening to it, it's just background noise, or in your house having the TV on, even though no one's watching it. All of these are sensory inputs that are draining your sensory receptors. Now, to restore that, as simple as silence. Turning off the radio on your drive home. Turning off the TV if no one's watching it. Dimming the lights on your computer in the evening time so that you're not having the brightest setting at 10 o'clock as you're getting ready to go to bed, that your body can start winding down by having some selective sensory deprivation, where you're purposely taking away some of the sensory input to allow some rest, some peace to come into your senses. That includes just spending some time in darkness. One simple thing to do if you have a tendency to have eye strain when staring at your computer at work is during your flow break cycles, when you're taking those 90 to 120 minutes breaks, and you're taking out, let's say, 5 minutes every 120 minutes to just walk around the hall, go get some water, whatever you need to do to get up and move, to spend just a couple of seconds closing your eyes. You don't have to have a nap. We used to say someone needs a power nap. You just need a power recovery strategy. And so you don't have to go to sleep and have a power nap. We're finding that having a powerful rest strategy has the same effect on your body. That's why companies like Facebook and Google, some of the companies that have the largest use of resources, electronics and internet and all of these things, are putting these things into action because they can understand that it not only keeps their employees healthier and happier, it makes them more productive because they don't get to 5 o'clock or 2 o'clock going to 5 and feel as if they just don't have anything left to give. Those 3 hours stay productive and they stay effective within their workday. And then last is creative rest. This is one so many people have never even heard of, let alone thinking about how to get more of it in their life. Those with a creative rest deficit have a tendency to just feel like rest is just extra thing that they don't really need. So they are always feeling drained without ability to be able to really be able to put a name to it. They don't know. I'm tired all the time. Well, why are you tired? Did you sleep? Yeah, I slept 7 or 8 hours. Well, is there something going on that's stressing you? Do you have a family situation? No, there's nothing I can pinpoint, but I just don't feel motivated anymore. I just don't feel any passion is the word many people use. I don't have passion for my job anymore. A recent study had come out that over 87% of the U.S. workforce says they have no passion for their job. Think about that. 87% of us go to work every day where we spend 40 plus hours in a company that we don't have passion. That's ridiculous. That really does make you feel like you're wasting time. But the thing is, we don't all need to go jump and change our jobs. What we need is to see how to restore our creative rest deficit, because that is where the passion gets awakened in us. You see, creative rest, when I talk about this, the first thing people say is, so are you telling me I need to sign up for an art class or take up a new instrument or learn a new language? No, all of that is work. All of that is doing more things. That is work. Creative rest is actually the opposite of that. Creative rest is that energy, that renewal that comes from the appreciation of things that have already been created. Think about the first time you saw, let's say, Niagara Falls or the Grand Canyon or the Rockies or the beach. One of the studies that came back talked about how many people say they feel restored and energized by being at the beach, just looking at the expansiveness of the ocean and just contemplating that. That is what creative rest looks like. It's allowing beauty to awaken awe and wonder inside of you. And in the process, restoring passion, restoring dreams, restoring the ability to look outside the box and to see something greater and bigger than what you're looking at right now. It's not just nature either. It includes things like art, great works of art that make you go, wow, or music. Have you ever heard some music that was just so beautiful, it just brought you a sense of peace and renewal? Those are all signs of creative rest. And those are all things that should be incorporated within our rest strategy. And it could be as simple as making sure that your work environment is not just a bunch of brown walls. It's very hard to stay passionate surrounded by beige walls 40 hours a week with nothing around there to inspire or awaken any awe or wonder in you. So you want to be specific in making sure that you're allowing creative rest within your life, because you don't always have time, vacation time, to take off to the ocean. So why not bring some of that to you? You can even have a picture in your office. One thing that I love, one of my clients did, was she did her whole office in a beach theme. So she is a chiropractor and she spends 40 plus hours a week in this place. So it has beach-like furniture. She has shells and bottles and sand. She has pictures of boats on the wall. She made her environment a place that is beautiful to her. Now, does it matter if any of her people that are coming to her love it? They don't have to be there 40 plus hours. And so it's the same with your office. You have to understand that the benefit is for you to give your best, you need to surround yourself with areas and ways of restoring yourself in the places that you pour out the most. And those with creative rest deficits are usually the people who have to be the most innovative, the most creative, the most outside thought thinkers, who are having to come up with new ways, problem solve. So we're talking about people in technology, people who are in medicine, people who are in any type of organization where you need to be able to be innovative and come up with new ways of fixing problems. That's a creative concept, to be able to go outside the norm, look at it from a different approach. And it requires creative rest to be able to keep your mind and your imagination awakened enough to be able to do that effectively. So if you find that you're not at the top of your game anymore, then I challenge you to start looking at some of these ways to get more creative rest in your life and to start seeing how that affects your ability to produce. When we're beating burnout, when you identify your rest deficits, you can stop getting rest that does not work. We have come to the belief now that rest is not effective because people do things that they call rest that really are not rest. They do things like saying, I'm going to rest on the weekend, and they sit and they watch Netflix streaming 3 hours of some type of show, and they think that at the end of streaming those 3 hours of a TV show, oh, I had rest, I should feel better when I go to work on Monday. Well, what did you restore in those 3 hours? You didn't restore anything. Unless what you were watching was something that was inspirational, that awakened creativity inside of you, then you didn't restore anything. And so you want your rest to be specific to the deficit that you're having. It's being intentional about getting the rest that you need, making sure that you are setting some personal boundaries so that when you identify, okay, I need to make some time in my day to do some type of flow break cycle, that you keep those commitments to yourself, that you do them, that you even, if necessary, come up with an app or use some of the apps that are available to schedule these flow break cycles. It means becoming comfortable with the word no and allowing yourself the freedom to use it when you know that you don't want to do something and not just be a people pleaser. And it's allowing that time to allow your mind, your body, and your spirit to relax. One of the main things that I offer all of my patients and my clients is something that's a free resource at restquiz.com. What this is a free rest deficit assessment. And what you do is when you take the test, the quiz, it will let you know which of the 7 types of rest that you are most deficient in. You'll get a score and you'll be able to quickly see, okay, I need more spiritual rest or I need more mental rest. Then you can focus your attention on getting the right type of rest and not just waste time on rest you're already excelling at. There is also a free challenge for those who want to go deeper that allows you to, over a course of 30 days, to receive an email that will focus on one of the 7 types of rest so that by the end of the 30 days, you have done over 30 different types of rest strategies so you can find the ones that really work for you. Thank you for the opportunity to share with your group and to help you see ways that you can recover your life, renew your energy, and restore your sanity.
Thank you for having the time to speak with us. I'm going to close the meeting with our four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Second, is it fair to all concerned?
And all concerned.
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Wait, I forgot that.
Oh,
I think that's
that's
it.
really fun.
I think we're done. Okay, I told you this. I'm a little out of it today. Thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing with us. I appreciate it. I'll see you next week, Rick. And Sandra, thanks again. If you'd like to join our group, we'd love to have you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Good night.